Hey, what's up, everybody? Can you hear me okay? Yeah, all good. I can see you, Abira, Charles, Heather, Tara, Sarah, Mark, a few more. Oh, there's everybody showing up now. Thank you for having your cameras on if it's at all possible. I've got, well, I can see one of you. Abigail is here from LSAT Demon. Hi, Abigail. Abigail's going to be co-hosting and posting resources in the chat. You can also private message her if you want to talk to her in the background about the LSAT, law school admissions, LSAT Demon, absolutely anything at all. If you don't know me, I'm Nathan Fox. I'm one of the co-founders of LSAT Demon, and we are here to talk about financing your law school education. Syllabus has a bunch of bullet points on it. I'll tell you in advance that I might not have a perfect answer for all of these questions. Some of them I know for sure. Some of them I'll have to speculate a little bit. We can crowdsource it as well. If you guys have thoughts and you want to share information at any point along the way, please go ahead and feel free in the chat. And if you want to talk to me out loud, I would love that. Just raise your hand. You can do that physically, or you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom and queue up that way. Law school costs a lot of money. I did a previous class about financing your law school applications. And that, I think we decided, adds up to something like $4,000 or $5,000 maybe if you're doing it the way we really recommend. We want you to apply broadly with your very best LSAT because we want you to try to get a scholarship to law school rather than having to pay for it. The price is, well, let's maybe just start with any random school. Somebody want to shout out any random law school that you're interested in?
UCLA.
UCLA. Thank you, Brittany. All right, so I'm going to go to lsatdemon.com/scholarships. And I'm going to do a Control F for UCLA. Oh, it's not under UCLA, is it? Los Angeles. Okay. And it's ranked 15th in the country, I guess, by US News. Not that US News is maybe going to be around for long in law school rankings, potentially. We'll see. Yeah, Yale, Harvard, and Berkeley so far have announced that they're not going to participate in the US News law school rankings. That's breaking news. Anyway, UCLA right now is ranked 15th in the country. And if you click on the Demon Scholarship Estimator, again, that's lsatdemon.com/scholarships. If you click on the little PDF icon over to the right, you'll see their 509 report. These 509 reports are public information. The American Bar Association requires law schools to put this information out every year. And we have at the bottom of the second page is where it finally gets to talking about price, which, you know, it's kind of, maybe that's everything you need to know. This document, like the purpose of this document is consumer protection, right? I mean, the American Bar Association said explicitly that consumer protection is why these documents exist. But the tuition is on the bottom of the second page. That's kind of strange because the price you're going to pay is like the most important thing about this as a consumer. Anyway, there at the bottom of the second page, we see that UCLA's resident tuition is $50,000 plus annual fees. Non-resident tuition for UCLA is $58,000 plus another $2,500 in annual fees. So yeah, at UCLA, we're talking about 50 grand just for the tuition, maybe more, plus a bunch of other costs that we'll come back to, I think, those. All right, so that's what we're talking about. Actually, maybe we should talk about some of these other, I don't have to cover these questions in order. There are other costs to consider beyond your tuition. So if we look at that 509 report again, it does have fees separate from tuition. So you can figure out what the school itself is going to cost you under tuition and fees. Of course, at the same time, you have to be thinking about the cost of living. You're going to be living somewhere anyway, right? So that's kind of like, I suppose maybe you can ignore food and rent and stuff because you're going to be eating. That said, if full-time law school, and most full-time law schools require you to require you not to work, at least during your 1L year, you're not supposed to be working at all. And even if you were allowed to work, it might be too taxing for you to work. So if you're not going to work at all for 3 years, then, you need to definitely think about the price of food and rent and your car and your cell phone and all that stuff. What other costs do we need to think about? Well, books for sure. Law schools, when I was in law school, a semester of books was definitely $1,500. So, 1,500 times 2 for the semester. So there's another $3,000. It's outrageous. What other costs? Am I thinking of any other costs? Am I forgetting other costs that we should be talking about for sure for law school? Okay.
Maybe,
okay. Eric.
Healthcare.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, I don't know if I should type this or just say it. Maybe healthcare.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yep. Health insurance for sure. The schools are probably going to make you have health insurance. I guess maybe now everybody already has health insurance anyway, but the school is going to require you to have a certain standard of health insurance, and you will have to pay for that as well. Eric is here from LSAT Demon. Hi, Eric. You can interact with him as well if you want to ask questions. He's going to be chiming in on the chat as well. Eric makes the point of opportunity cost. That's something that you really should be considering here. It's not money that you have to pay out of pocket, but if you're not working for 3 years, there is an opportunity cost there. Not only the money that you won't make if you can't work, but also the 3 years of experience and promotions and on-the-job training and whatever else you might be getting from your employer during that 3 years. So you really are, you're not going anywhere professionally other than this new profession of, okay, I'm going to go into law school and be a lawyer. Can't even take the bar, for like 3.5, 4 years down the road before you're going to be able to do that. So opportunity cost, thank you, Eric, I think is something we should probably be talking about. First bullet point on our syllabus tonight is what are merit-based scholarships. Merit-based scholarships, the vast majority of schools are giving merit-based scholarships, essentially using the proxy of what's your LSAT and what's your undergraduate GPA. The reason why they're doing that is because it helps them to improve in the US rankings or US News rankings on the one hand. On the other hand, they are explicit that it gives them a proxy for how well they think you're going to do in your 1L grades. And 1L grades are highly correlated with, success in law school overall and the ability to get a job once you're done. So the schools really do use these numeric measures strongly when they're looking at decisions about admissions and also when they're looking at decisions about scholarships. To continue my example, or our example about UCLA Law School, right next to the tuition section at the bottom of the second page on their 509 report, there's a table there for grants and scholarships 2020, 2021. And I see that of 1,002 students at UCLA, 997 of them were receiving some kind of grant. Those grants come in two major categories. One of them is military. If you're getting some kind of a veterans or active duty or whatever, GI Bill, yellow ribbon, all that stuff, if you're getting any of those government benefits, you probably already know about it. The other major source of grants is the schools themselves giving out merit-based scholarships, essentially, again, high LSAT, high GPA, or maybe one of those at least, to attract a student who probably could get in elsewhere, but they're going to take one step down in the rankings in order to pay, in order to take this scholarship. So they're trying to entice you, for UCLA specifically, they're looking at somebody who has good grades and good LSAT. Those numbers are on the first page, by the way. Their LSAT ranges go between 166 and 171 at UCLA. Their undergraduate GPA is going from 3.57 to 3.92. Again, that's the 25th to 75th percentile, so the middle 50% of the class. And so, yeah, that's, good grades, good LSAT. And when you're at the top of those numbers, if you have like a 3.9 and like a 171, UCLA knows that you're also going to get into some higher ranked schools if you apply to those other schools. And because of that, UCLA is going to give you a merit-based grant to essentially discount your tuition from somewhere between, on the low end, and this is all on the 509 report. You guys can read these 509s, and you really should, before you go to any of these schools, you need to look at this information. We see that UCLA is giving grants that, again, the middle 50% of the grants goes between $8,700 a year all the way up to $26,600 per year. And that means that there's a quarter of the class that's actually getting more than $26,600. It looks like here, yeah, they're giving 22% of the class is getting somewhere between half and full tuition. And again, half and full tuition, tuition was 50 to 60,000. So yeah, there are people who are getting 30, 40, even all the way up to full tuition scholarships. These are coming from the schools, and they're based almost exclusively on, well, actually not just LSAT and GPA, but also URM status. They have a genuine interest in making law schools, less monochrome than they currently are. And because of that, they do aggressively recruit students who identify as URM. And so that's going to impact the kinds of offers that you're likely to see on our scholarship estimator. All right. That's that. And I'll get you in just one sec, David. That is the first and biggest and most important thing that I can teach you about law school admissions, is that they just aren't charging everybody the price that they claim to be charging. So UCLA, yeah, $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year, but who's actually paying $50,000 a year or $60,000 a year? A very slim minority of their students. It says here that, apparently like there's 0% of people at UCLA that aren't getting some kind of a grant. And again, the majority of that money is coming straight from the school itself. When you're admitted, they do it in order to entice you to go to their school. They know that you probably could get in somewhere a bit better, so they discount their tuition steeply in the form of merit-based scholarships. You've got to know that fact. You've got to use, I really strongly encourage you to use our scholarship estimator. Again, lsatdemon.com/scholarships. And I want you to look at those 509 reports specifically at any school you're interested in going to. Look at the LSAT and GPA ranges. Look at their scholarship matrix on the bottom of the second page of the 509. Make sure you are making good decisions about where to go at what price. David had a hand up a second ago. Do you got a question, David?
Yeah, so I guess it's something you maybe touched on in like today's like daily podcast, but with past 2 days, I guess, signaling that some schools are leaving the US news rankings, the ABA trying to pass, I guess, test optional in the near future. I guess, do you see this kind of scholarship game that you're describing changing in the near future with this kind of signaling of de-emphasizing the importance of the LSAT, or at least trying to be more holistic when it comes to rankings and applications and such?
I hope that it will change, but I don't think that they are likely to de-emphasize LSAT and GPA very much, because LSAT and GPA are excellent predictors of your success in law school. I think that it is, it is a hopeful thing to me that some of the top schools have decided that they're not giving any, or sorry, see, they haven't said that they're not giving any merit-based aid. What they have said is that they are not going to participate, not going to participate in the US News rankings. Does that mean that they're then going to de-emphasize LSAT and undergraduate GPA? It certainly could. My question is, what are they going to actually look at then? And how are they going to actually make that happen? Because you have to remember that they're evaluating thousands of applications. Looking here at this 509 report, UCLA last year had 7,900 completed applications. Of those, they admitted 1,200. So, you've got to get 8,000 down to 1,000 roughly. And LSAT and GPA, they work neatly in a spreadsheet in order to, it just seems like the obvious place to start. Why wouldn't you start with the 4.0s and the 180s? Like, that they're pretty talented, right? And so I just think that law schools, in just being efficient, I think that they are likely to continue to use this measure, the LSAT, that they have used for so long. But I don't know. I'm speculating. Lauren, there's new 509 reports every single year. We put them into the LSAT daemon as soon as they come out. They don't come out all in a batch, though. So yeah, but it's annual. Sarah.
Hello. So I'm wondering how you strike a balance between this promising scholarship information in the 509 report and then employment statistics. Because even if you go to a school and you put that time in and you make that opportunity cost, if you have a school and it doesn't have a great reputation in getting you a job, then it doesn't really matter that much that you paid less money for it. So just how do you find the right combination?
You have to make that decision once you have the offers. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to definitely get the best LSAT you can, get the best undergraduate grades you can. Then when you apply broadly and wait for the offers to come in. Typically, merit-based aid comes with your offer of admission or to follow in a week or two after your offer of admission. You do have an opportunity to negotiate that money with schools. They say explicitly if there's information that you think they should know about, they invite you to share that information with them. And so you don't have to take the first scholarship offer that they give you, but then eventually you're going to make a decision. And the thing is, Sarah, it's very unlikely to be Harvard or Podunk County Night Law School. It's not gonna, it's gonna be like, if it's Harvard, it's gonna be Harvard and any number of other badass schools. And now you're comparing like really good options against one another. In the middle range, they're gonna be a whole bunch of similar schools, and you're gonna get like this spectrum of offers from the schools, and you can decide what school is gonna offer you the best value at the best price. But it's almost always, when I do the analysis myself, if I ever look at people's actual offers, like they'll share their spreadsheet with me sometimes. And if I see when I see people's spreadsheets, it's extremely rare that I don't eventually come around to, I think you should take the best full ride offer that you can get. Because the best full ride, it's still at a good enough school to get you where you want to go. And the top school that admitted you is not Harvard. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, but I do have a question about the specifics of applying broadly.
Sure.
Like, how many schools and of what tiers would you like? Do you have an example of that?
I would use the scholarship estimator. Okay, so put in 165 if that's your best LSAT, and put in 3.7 if that's your actual undergraduate GPA, and then just find schools that are in places where you would like to go that are likely to give you a full ride or half to full. And, of course, apply to a couple of stretch schools. If there's some dream school that you're never going to sleep at night if you don't apply to that school, well, then yeah, apply to that school. But you have to understand that that's a long shot. And if they admit you and some other school offers you a full ride, you've really got to think about it. You might graduate from law school with $300,000 of debt. That's not even counting undergrad. So does this school, are you so sure that the employment outcomes from this school are $300,000 better? And maybe they are. We have former and actually current teachers who are at Harvard and Yale and Stanford, or Harvard and Yale anyway, right now. And they frequently end up paying for those schools. But if we're having that same discussion much lower down in the rankings, like let's say UCLA admits you, but they don't give you any money at all, you don't want to be that sucker on campus that's one of the 7 people out of 1,000 who aren't getting a scholarship. That's just, it seems ridiculous, especially because if you also applied to USC right across town, Loyola, Southwestern, Irvine, maybe you give yourself a range of schools, and hopefully you can figure out 10 to 15, maybe more if you're geographically flexible, especially. And then you just wait for the offers to come in. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Anybody?
Yeah, quick question.
Yeah.
So you may have touched on this in the past before, but are there like top, let's say at the top, some of those universities that you can't negotiate with? Or is that pretty much you can negotiate with? It's fair game for all the universities, no matter the ranking.
Well, the thing is, so some schools have a policy, and it has nothing to do actually with the ranking. Some schools have a policy of we don't negotiate scholarships. That is their first move in the scholarship negotiation that you are having, one way or the other. Because they will respond. This was another thing we got off of Dean Z, University of Michigan, Dean. We got off of her podcast, is that even if they say we don't, I think that's where we got it from, Dean Z. I don't know. Even if they say they don't negotiate, you can say, Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I understand. But I do have some concern. I was wondering if I could just speak with you briefly because I have some information about my case, and I was wondering if I could just share that information with you. And you put them in a position where they're very likely going to say, yes, you can share that information with us. Okay, well, then what are you doing now? Well, you're negotiating. You don't call it a negotiation. They hate that word for whatever reason. But that really is what's happening. They're giving everybody a different price. And you can just look at their offer to you, because it looks so good on the surface. It's like, wow, oh my God, they're giving me, it's a $75,000 offer. I have to say yes to that. Well, wait a second. Their tuition is $50,000 a year. This offer is $25,000 a year for 3 years. The $75,000 offer is not going to be money that's ever given to you. Quite the opposite. You're going to start paying them $25,000 a year. Oh, by the way, your tuition is probably going to go up next year and the year after that as well, plus interest, plus fees, plus everything else. And this $75,000 offer, see, that they give you to make you feel good about yourself, it's not as good as it looks. All right. How do need-based and specialty scholarships work? Every school is going to try to tell you about other scholarship programs that they may have. And some schools seem to be moving away from merit-based scholarships entirely, or they're now adding specifically need-based scholarships. And that's super cool. That's great news. But for years, decades, actually, the schools have also done a thing where they say, oh, yeah. Oh, we have hundreds of outside scholarships that are available for students who matriculate with us. And you can apply for those scholarships once school starts, or once you've paid your deposit, or they'll say, oh, we have all kinds of scholarships available for people in their 2L and 3L years. And once you start here, you'll be able to look into those scholarships. Well, the reality of those scholarships is going to vary wildly from school to school. And in many cases, it's going to boil down to like a binder in their finance office somewhere. And yeah, it's going to have, 50 scholarships that are available. But when you start looking at what those scholarships actually are, it's going to be like $2,500 scholarship available for, if you grew up on a cattle ranch outside of Patterson, California, then you're this scholarship and you can apply for it. Other ones are going to require an essay competition, or there's going to be some other like application that you have to do. It could be interviews, it could be all kinds of stuff. And in the long run, I just don't know very many applicants at all who have financed their legal educations meaningfully in that sort of a way. It could be that it's happening and I don't see it, but the number of those scholarships, the amount of those scholarships, the difficulty of getting those scholarships is such that for my whole LSAT teaching career, the merit-based scholarships that are given by the schools essentially just dwarf these need-based and specialty scholarships, unless you have some magical connection to a specific scholarship that you are definitely going to win. Sorry if that's really bad news for everybody, but I just hate to see the schools, they do these negotiations thousands of times per year. They have thousands of applicants. They admit hundreds or thousands of students, and they're gonna kind of bullshit you about what the value is of a legal education and how to finance it. I've seen their tricks before. So they're gonna say shit like, oh yeah, we have those scholarships. That's there's for later. No, I don't want scholarships later. I'm deciding whether I'm going to go to your school. We need to talk about the price. If you don't show me my merit-based aid right now, then you're essentially just telling me that I'm going to be on the hook for whatever the tuition is. Third bullet point. Will law schools see my income from my FAFSA, and how do they consider it for scholarships? We did a little bit of research on this today. Eric, please chime in if anytime you're ready. But my understanding of it right now is that you don't have to fill out the FAFSA until you've already potentially applied to the school. You can, I guess, do the FAFSA or link the school to the FAFSA as early as like October of the year, before you're going to start law school. So you could, I guess, share the FAFSA with the schools. And if you do, then they might look at it. But if you don't do the FAFSA before you apply, then they have no way to know what your financial situation is unless they have some other form. Eric, am I right on that?
Yeah, I have not filled out the FAFSA yet. I have applied and been admitted to one school so far, so it's not necessary. Neither is it sufficient for being admitted to law school. You will have to, particularly if you have to take out student loans, do that, and particularly for consideration for any need-based aid. For instance, at a school like Harvard or Yale, which doesn't give out merit scholarships but does give out need-based aid, they will require that you submit your FAFSA. That each school will have its own date on when that's required. You'll need to check in with each school individually on when that's required. It is possible, if you are, I don't know the specific dates for different schools, it's possible based on when their deadline for FAFSA submission is, and if you're like on a wait list, that you might be required to send a FAFSA in before they make a definitive decision. Presumably they could use that information to make admissions decisions if they wanted to. Seems like that would be really shitty of them, but I don't know for sure that they don't do that. But
that was the complaint, wasn't it? Of either the Harvard law dean or the Yale law dean was saying,
right,
we're taking ourselves out of the US News rankings because US News rankings now use indebtedness as one of the rankings measures. It's only like 5%. But they said, if you're going to, it sounds it might have been well-meaning, right? Well-intentioned, that US News is going to say, hey, we're concerned about the indebtedness of your graduates. How much money do people owe when they graduate from your school? The Harvard and or Yale dean, I can't remember, said, well, but then that gives an incentive for schools to try to admit rich kids. Because they are less likely to end up having to borrow a ton of money, if they're getting help from somewhere.
I would recommend waiting until, I don't think there's a reason to share that information any earlier than you have to, particularly if you come from means and don't want a school deciding whether it's for need-based aid or for just like, because they could look at the same thing and say, oh, well, we really don't need to offer this guy a merit-based scholarship because he's got lots of money.
But it does have to be you personally having money. I read today that the FAFSA for grad school doesn't consider your parents' money at all. So it does have to be, your finances.
Yeah. I think there are different classifications depending on whether you're deemed dependent or independent, but I don't remember. Maybe your knowledge is more up to date than mine. I did see, so many of you already probably have your FSA ID from applying to undergrad. I think same login, I believe, should work. Update your financials, and then you basically tell them which law schools to send your FAFSA to and when. As for, there was an earlier, it looks like Abigail responded to the international applicant, and earlier someone had asked about like how all this works for international students. I'll admit that I have no idea.
Yeah, I just know that international students can get scholarships. I don't think that they can get all of the same scholarships because, I think it's possible that like a certain state school might be like, well, you do have to be a U.S. citizen in order to get that. It could just, the rules are going to vary from school to school to school. But I know for sure that I have seen international students get scholarships, including full rides. Okay. Will schools see the income information on my LSAC fee waiver form? That one we just can't answer, but Eric agreed with me that it seems like it would be pretty fucked up if they could. Like the fact that because you applied for the LSAC fee waiver, then that information gets shared to the law schools that you're applying to. That seems like a big mistake if they are doing it that way. I seriously doubt it. And my guess is that when you're doing that application, it probably explains it to you and it says that the information is all being shared privately. They seem to be pretty careful about those things. So that would be my guess, but I don't know the answer to that one 100%. Anybody know anything more about that one? Okay. Do part-time students receive less scholarship money? Well, no. And at some, yes, at some schools, but no at other schools. The 509 reports that I was talking about earlier, again, go to lsatdemon.com/scholarships, click on the little PDF icons next to all of the schools. Those 509 reports do break down scholarships between full-time and part-time students. So you're going to have to do your own research on that if you're interested in part-time programs. It'll also break down the admissions, LSAT ranges, GPA ranges. So you can get a pretty good idea there what your likelihood is of getting scholarships if you're applying to part-time programs. But you're going to have to dig into those 509s yourself. Vanessa, I have heard of people getting annual fees covered on scholarships. They can easily say no. They're going to say no. It's hilarious because it's going to be like, oh, well, no, because that's what we fund our campus rec center with. Yeah, I know, but why can't I get money to cover it? Like it's not an answer to the question, really. So anyway, I would, just be firm because they're not gonna say, unless you're like unprofessional, they're not gonna say no. And also we're taking away our offer of admission, or we're taking away the scholarship we already did offer you. I've never heard that once in 15 years of doing this. So if you negotiate pretty tough, obviously you're smiling the whole time, but you're telling them, oh, wow, I've got all this debt from undergrad, or, oh, I've just got this sick family member, or I've got this, whatever it is, but you're just telling them essentially in nicer words, you're telling them, I need more money from you, or I can't go to your school. And the harder you negotiate, the better your final deal is going to be. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to go back and forth with them 100 times. I'm just saying that you're going to know your value. So apply broadly, apply early, apply with the best LSAT you can possibly get a bunch of offers from a bunch of different schools, take your time in doing this. And then when you have narrowed it down to a couple schools that you're serious about, you can then get kind of specific about the price there and ask them to reconsider. Some schools are going to have certain scholarship reconsideration processes where you might have to, for example, you might have to submit a competing offer from another school, and maybe they'll only accept competing offers from certain types of schools. But every school is going to treat this a little bit differently. The most important thing I can tell you is that if you don't ask, you're getting nothing. And if you ask, you might get nothing, but you might get something. And so it would be kind of foolish of you. I've seen people literally I saw someone go from like it was basically went from half price to full ride in an email. This was like 15 years ago, and I saw someone get $75,000 basically from just sending an email. And that's when that's what blew my mind about this whole process, was like, oh shit, wow, they really are flexible with the pricing. Now this was a super high qualified applicant, and they had a competing offer from another really great school. And so, you know, they had legitimate reason to be negotiating. If you don't have, you know, that killer LSAT, if you don't have offers from other schools that are, you know, that they give a shit about, if you're not willing to walk away, then you're unlikely to get, you know, serious reconsideration of your scholarships. All right. What costs should I consider beyond tuition? Oh yeah, loan interest. If we haven't already mentioned that, the loans will be accruing over time. So you've got to think about not just how much money am I borrowing for tuition and fees and living expenses and books and whatever else, but what kind of interest am I going to be paying over time on this? And it can take quite a long time for people to be making enough money where they can meaningfully start paying against these loans. So you've got to think about that as well. For me, income-based repayment is essentially a nightmare. The schools are going to try to pump up income-based repayment. If you go to any of their financing sessions that are sponsored by the school, you know, their story is, hey, education debt is good debt, green light, you should borrow more. I mean, they don't say that, but you should borrow. Definitely, this is a good it's an investment in your future. This, essentially, they're telling you that it's safe, which is a lie. And if they start talking about income-based repayment, you know, it's going to sound like this. Well, we have we have these programs for loan forgiveness if you're going to work in the public interest. And, you know, you go into when you graduate, you go into a income-based repayment program where your payments are low. You know, it's just what you can afford. And they make it sound like, oh, well, it's really not that bad. Oh, it is that bad. You graduated with $300,000 in debt. Just the interest alone on that is going to be thousands of dollars per year. And if your income-based repayment comes back at like, you know, a couple $100 a month, well, it's not going to add up to enough that it even covers the interest on your loan. So you're going to be accruing more debt, even though you're making timely payments. That's the nightmare of income-based repayment. You're paying as much as you can pay every single month, but your debt keeps going up in the hopes that 10 years from now, after, you know, fighting the good fight, working in the public interest, you then are going to be able to get your loans repaid. And I just don't think that that's a good play. I have another a close friend of mine, attorney, who just announced last night that she is going to be resigning from her job at the end of the year. She was working in public interest. She was fighting the good fight. She made it about 5 years, and now she's going to be just spacing out of the legal profession entirely with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt still. And that's just not where we want to go. So sorry for taking so long to talk about that, but the loan interest is something that you seriously do need to consider. Should I take a gap year or years to work and build savings? I've never told anybody not to take a gap year. Don't just take one, take two, take three, take all the time you need to figure out whether this is really the career that you're gonna like go all in on for the rest of your life. Work in a law firm if you haven't already. get some experience, find some, explore different areas of law, get to know lawyers, judges, law clerks, whatever, and make the most educated decision you can possibly make. If you also save up some money during your gap year, that's fantastic. Unless you're making a lot of money, it's not going to be enough money to pay for anything. It's like a drop in the bucket compared to the cost of law school. So the real reason to take a gap year is to make sure that you're applying with your best LSAT. I want you applying with the best grades you can possibly achieve if you're still an undergrad. If that ship has sailed, that ship has sailed. But if you're still taking classes, I want you to get straight A's. I then want you to get the very best LSAT you can possibly achieve. That takes most people 3 to 6 months, but it takes some people, a year or two, or sometimes more. We just hired somebody who had a 30-point improvement over the course of 3 or 4 years. And, that's a life-changing amount of improvement. And it makes all the sense in the world that she took that time to make that improvement. So take a gap year, take more than one gap year, especially if you're just don't have the best LSAT you can possibly achieve. It really is the primary, thing that's going to move the needle on your law school applications. And it would be foolish to apply with less than your best there. Should I work during school and attend a part-time program? I love part-time programs. I think that full-time law school can be, a great experience for a certain type of student. If you've always been a really, really, really great student and you super love school, then yeah, I think you're gonna really like the 3 years of law school. It's like school, except for more. There's just a lot of it. It's just mountains and mountains of readings. Anyways, that's the argument for full time, I guess. But this ain't undergrad. Like, you're not going to be in a frat. You're not going to be like probably living in the dorms, or if you are living in the dorms, it's going to be miserable with a bunch of other people who are studying full time. So I would really not encourage you to go to law school for that purpose. If you already have a career and there's a part-time program that will allow you to keep your current successful career while also studying law part-time, it significantly decreases the risk that you are signing up for when you sign on the dotted line for law school. You spread the tuition out over 4 years. So if you drop out after just 1 year, it costs you a little bit less. Many people do drop out after their first year of law school. Part-time, you've been making money along the way. So whether you make it or whether you don't make it, I feel like the part-time program, it makes a ton of sense. Now, not every school offers part-time. Some part-time programs are harder to get into than the full-time program at the same school. Other part-time programs are easier to get into than the full-time program at the same school. You've got to look at the 509s and make your own decisions on whether you should go part-time or not. But I think it's a great idea. I mean, the thing that I've heard about part-time programs that makes a lot of sense to me is that it just limits the amount of time that other people are really going to have to be able to study. And that's not that they're not working hard, but if you and everybody else in your class still has a full-time job, then you just know that these people aren't, burning the candle at both ends, studying nonstop and driving themselves insane. I have heard that the part-time programs tend to be a little bit more civilized. Oh, Celine asks about accelerated JD programs. That's the flip side, where you do your JD in 2.5 years or just 2 years. The intensity is obviously going to be seriously ramped up there. It's kind of the opposite of what I was saying before. I can see it being a little bit cheaper though, because your opportunity cost is less and presumably you'll get, out the other end and making money sooner. So I'm not against accelerated programs. Yeah, and I do think that's how they work, Celine, is that they usually add summers. So instead of, and it might be bad or it could be good depending on what they have you doing during those summers. But, you know, ideally you'd be getting some work experience. And if instead you're just doing 2.5 years worth of school in, or sorry, 3 years of school within 2.5 years, because you're using both of the summers, I don't know, downside, and you're not getting the actual experience. So. That's it as far as agenda items go. Eric, Abigail, what am I missing?
I'm just going to drop a link in the chat to recent Demon Daily podcast episode by Matt and Becca, where they talk about 1L summer job experiences and how crucial they are to your legal career. So that's what I would be concerned about with an accelerated program. If it fills up your summers with classes and prevents you from being able to, you know, take on a clerkship or work at some government agency or get a summer job at a firm, I'd be concerned about that. I mean, I'll dig up that podcast episode and share it.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, let's go Charles, then Celine.
I don't know if you saw my question about the an extra student, an nth student. So, you know, we all want to have an excellent application. So suppose we all have an excellent application relative to the median, et cetera, et cetera. And we apply, and I'm wondering if their budgets for merit-based aid are fixed, or, I mean, essentially it's like printing money to admit that excellent next student.
Yeah, that's how it would work at my school. If I were in charge, it would be like, well, these people, they're not paying for law school. You know, if I'm giving them a scholarship, I'm just essentially, I don't have to give them real money. I just don't charge them tuition. What's the difference? The schools seem to, a lot of times they're gonna communicate as if they have a fixed budget for scholarships. But I just don't know why that would actually be the case. Like because it's not real money. So we have seen schools, by the way, in bouts of greed. We have seen schools kind of all at the same time balloon their enrollment numbers, or at least that's what it felt like what was happening in 2009 when I went to law school. Hastings, my alma mater, they had gone from, you know, a class of like 350 to a class of like 550 in the course of just a year or two to presumably boost revenue. When they do that, they can also offer other scholarship seats, I suppose. I mean, they've got more money coming in, so there's no shortage of money to teach or facilities or whatever. The downside for them of doing it that way is that they then end up like lowering the average caliber of student in their school. But I agree with you, Charles, that in theory, they should be able to add excellent students on full ride scholarships pretty much whenever they want.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Isabel.
Hi. So 2 questions. My first question is, what are some traps that we should look out for when we're reading offer letters? And the follow-up question would be, what is the ideal perfect offer letter? Like, what would the language be? Would it say like completely full ride, or would they phrase it in a certain kind of way?
It's going to vary. I mean, there's hundreds of law schools, so they're going to do it hundreds of different ways. I would just encourage you to read all of it. I mean, step one, read it. It's shocking how many people don't read the kinds of offers that they're getting. So I would, you know, it's not like that's actually the trap itself, but for people who aren't used to dealing, I guess, with lawyers, it's like, let's read the entire offer letter, not just selected snippets.
It got me thinking, because the recent podcast that you guys did, you read someone's offer letter. It's like a $200 stipend for studying, and I've never heard of something like that. So I was wondering, is that like a benefit or a negative, and how to kind of weigh those options out?
Yeah, it's going to just vary school by school. I mean, this is one of the reasons why we need to apply broadly in the first place. If we apply broadly, then we have a range of offers and we can compare and we can, because we know our worth in the marketplace, because we have multiple offers, not just one, but many people wanting our attention, we can then, when there's something that doesn't make perfect sense, or if there's something that is actually bad for us, which can frequently happen, we can then push back on that and say, hey, what about this right here? What does this mean? And, or I don't want that. Frequently, they don't do it as much anymore as they used to, because they kind of got bad PR for it. But the law schools used to do tons and tons of these renewable scholarships, which essentially meant that they weren't automatically renewed, that you had to qualify for renewal. And they can trick you like, oh, all you need is a 3.0. That seems easy, right? 3.0. Yeah, but then not if at the same time their average GPA for 1Ls is 2.7 and it's graded on a strict curve. And that is actually the case at many law schools, where just B plus is B plus is that's the curve. Wait, B plus. No, sorry. B minus. Sorry, B minus is the curve. So 2.7. And it takes a 3.0 to renew your scholarship. So that's the type of shit you have to look at. And it's on the 509s, by the way, the renewability. It'll say it on the 509 report. It'll either show how many scholarships were reduced or eliminated, or it'll say, like UCLA's says, the school does not award scholarships that may be reduced or eliminated. There's a section on the 509 report for conditional scholarships.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry it took me so long to spit that out. Thanks, Isabel. Sarah.
Hello again. So I have a question about your scholarship tool on your website.
Yeah.
My GPA is 15 years old. I graduated 15 years ago. So is there any sort of adjustment that I need to do to use that tool appropriately, or to get a more accurate estimate?
Nope.
Okay.
Unfortunately, and again, the schools are going to tell you that, oh, well, they're going to take that into account. And you might want to write, especially if your grades are bad, then you might want to write a 1-sentence addendum just pointing them to the fact that this was something that happened, that's when you were 21 and you're 36 now. They probably know. And it also probably doesn't matter, because they're going to have to report your LSAT and GPA on the 509 report. And that's what US News uses right now for rankings. And so they have a lot of incentive to admit people with just what's the number. Now, if all the schools in the world follow suit and get rid of US News rankings, then we're in a whole new ballgame. And this is like stuff that's just happening right now. And we don't know what's going to happen. But I believe so far, after a few days, it's 3 schools.
Columbia just joined.
Okay, Columbia is now on the list. So we got 4 schools. So we'll see what they do. Oh, Stanford. Okay. Thank you, Philip. Is that good? I don't know. How much are they going to de-emphasize LSAT and GPA? I have no idea. I guess we're going to find out. I'm out of time, y'all. I got a class. It's my normal Friday night class. So I got to go to that class. Abigail's going to go with me. Eric's going to hang out. So if you have more questions, want to continue the conversation, you can stay and talk to Eric as long as you want. I got to go. Thanks for being here. Hopefully that was helpful. By the way, I hope it's clear, but I don't know everything. We definitely don't know everything. We're trying to learn these things. So if you ever get information and you want to help us get better at what we do, you can email the podcast. That's help@thinkinglsat.com. Email the daily. That's I forget what that is, daily@lsatdemon.com. You can email our customer service team, help@lsatdemon.com. Just talk to us, but keep sharing information and we'll continue to learn as much as we can about a pretty mysterious world. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Oh, Sarah. Oh, you're just saying bye. Okay, bye. See you next time. Thanks.
Hey, y'all. Crazy week for law school admissions. There's a group of us Demon teachers who have like our own kind of chat going on, and it's everyone's freaking out. What's up, Isabel?
I completely missed it. I joined late. My notification came in late. I know something happened with, I believe, Yale and Harvard dropping out of the. Why does that matter?
So well, so much of the law school admissions game has centered around schools jockeying for position in the US News rankings. That's basically the reason why these merit scholarships exist to the extent that they do, is because anywhere, depending on how much weight you give the LSAT, the US News and World Report, a significant double digit at least percentage or weight of their ranking comes down to the academic prowess as measured in LSAT and GPA of a school's class. So to raise their ranking, they're going to pay applicants for their LSAT and GPA. Now, these schools, the rankings are as discussed at length. I won't get into it here. The rankings are bullshit for a number of reasons. And if the schools decide to get out of that game and not cooperate with US News anymore, it is true that US News will still have access to publicly available data, such as the ABA 509 reports, but they won't have the same depth of data that they usually get from these schools that voluntarily respond to their surveys and provide more info, for instance, about student outcomes. So it's a big deal. And as the dominoes start to fall, Yale, Harvard, Berkeley, Columbia, Georgetown, I think someone said Stanford too, as these schools start to distance themselves and not play that game anymore, it means that their incentives in selecting particular students and their ability, hopefully their ability to look at more than just your LSAT score and your GPA, that becomes more of a deal. Now, this is totally new. How widespread it is, I don't know. Exactly what the effect will be to the prevalence of merit scholarships, I don't know. This is as of now, the LSAT is still a reliable indicator for many schools of how a student is going to do in law school. I think they're still going to find it useful, but remains to be seen just how much of a change occurs. Charles, you got a question?
Yeah, related to the next student coming into, and entering class. Suppose you have an excellent package that you put together and you apply to a bunch of schools, but the one that you really want to go to just isn't giving you the financial aid you think you deserve. Is it ever worth considering just walking?
Sure. Yeah.
Not going in.
I mean, what are your reasons for needing to or wanting to go to a particular school? I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
it is true. You're able to walk and reapply, and if you can walk and bump your LSAT score even by a few points and reapply next year, they're gonna still have your application from a previous year on file. But in some cases, the difference between a 25th percentile and a 75th percentile at a school are like literally 2 LSAT points or
Yeah.
3 LSAT points. So if reapplying to next year came with a higher LSAT score, that could be a reason to do that.
I'm geographically bound. I live here in Madison, Wisconsin. I would love to go to UW-Madison. They have a part-time 1L program, a lot of nice benefits. If they saw my address, which they will on my application, they know they've got me. They've got no incentive to offer me an excellent package.
I think that is where, not necessarily, I think you can use that in your favor. Schools also know that they lose out to local applicants all the time who decide to pick up and go to University of Minnesota or Notre Dame or some other local school, right? So they know that, I think they know that you're geographically bound to the extent that you tell them that.
Yeah.
So that's just something I'd be, I think you can use that in your favor. Be like, hey, I'm from here, so I really would like to attend University of Wisconsin. And I think as a negotiation tactic for scholarship, they're also worried about admitting people who don't want to go to their school. So if you express genuine interest, that can be useful, but you don't want to overdo it, right? If they think they've got you on the hook. So yeah, I hear you. That's just a dance. That's just negotiation. So I'm sure I'm going to go through. By the way, I am also in the process of, I've got my applications in and I'm waiting to hear back. So I'm going through this process myself as well. Hopefully we can stay in touch and talk about how all this goes.
I won't apply until the next cycle. I'm just new to LSAT Demon. So
cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, welcome. Yeah, sure thing. Celine, what's up?
Hi. So I had spoken to like Nate a little while, like a month ago, and he had told me like to kind of, it's better to wait till next cycle for me because I like just recently started studying as far as scholarships and all of that. And so I still he was telling me that if I applied like February 1st, like I'd be the last of the last, which is true for like a lot of schools. But I've also seen like Pepperdine and like USC, for instance, like that's their priority deadline and they can like still accept up until like April. So I was just kind of wondering if you had any insight if I still applied for like February, and I'm still applying by the priority deadline for like those specific schools. Do I still have a good chance at scholarships?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Could you get a scholarship? Yes. If you apply broadly to a bunch of schools so that you are as competitive an applicant as you can be, so that when Pepperdine comes at you with a scholarship that you don't think fully suits your abilities, you can turn around and say, hey, what else? Pepperdine is Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Southwestern is giving me a full ride.
Oh, okay.
Can you match that?
So even if I don't necessarily want to go to those schools, it's good to apply because then you have like competing offers essentially.
I have applied to schools that I would likely not go to.
Okay.
But that I knew were competitor schools to other ones that I was more interested in going to.
And that
I think doing that both based on where they are in the rankings and also geographically. A geographical competitor that gives you a full ride, turn that around and say, hey, this is what they're giving me.
I see.
That's persuasive. The point is, if you apply broadly so that you can make yourself that strong an applicant, will you get some offers if you apply in February? Probably, yes. Will you get, on the whole, the best offers you could have? Probably not. Yeah. The other thing about shooting for February is you are banking on the January LSAT, right?
Yeah.
I didn't take the LSAT just one time.
I know most people don't. I know I'm taking a risk with that.
Yeah. Hey, I was in the same boat. I thought I was applying last year, and it was a tough decision to delay and apply this year instead. it went like this. And I'm
Yeah,
so
I
happy
know.
I did.
I know. Everyone keeps telling me that, and that a lot of people were in
Yeah.
that same boat. I think for me, I just want to maybe just try, and if it doesn't go my way, then shift. I don't know.
Yeah, gotcha. Thanks, Celine. I'm going to try to catch up on some questions that came through in the chat. Kyle asked about an exchange program in college. LSAC GPA is lower than diploma GPA. That just happens sometimes. LSAC has their own formula based on the transcripts that you send them. Schools use your LSAC GPA. And I was lucky that mine was the same as my diploma GPA, but that's not always the case. Your LSAC GPA just is what it is. There's not really much you can do about it. What else? Let's see. I got a direct message here. First gen applied to a relatively lowly ranked school. Scored a 157 in 2005, so a while ago. Got a master's degree at NYU. Take the LSAT in January. Oh, I think this is asking about application is already in, but would want to update the school about taking the LSAT once your application is already in. You can email schools to let them know. I don't know if they automatically get updated on that, but you can certainly email the schools to let them know. I wouldn't necessarily expect it to do anything for you. It might, especially if it goes up, but the schools are not obligated to reconsider your application with a higher score. We had a story on the podcast a while ago about a guy who applied to a school who said, "Hey, I have another score coming in. Please wait, don't consider my application until my other score comes in." And before it came in, they rejected him. So it's not always what happens. Yes, a school might consider your later score, but they don't have to. Let's see. All right, let's go back. I want to catch up on chat here. How can we check outcomes for a school? Check out lawschooltransparency.com. That's where I go to check in on some of those like employment outcomes, lawschooltransparency.com. Easier way to see how many graduates from a given school make big law, same thing. Lawschooltransparency.com, you can search by school and they have graphs on how many went to school, what the bar passage rates were, what the job types were, etc. Or Bonnie suggested ABA required disclosures.org. Thanks, Bonnie. Cool. Didn't do well on first LSAT, and I retook it last weekend, waiting for my scores. Do you think I could get into law school if my undergrad GPA is at 3.68? Yeah, of course. Play around with a scholarship estimator to see what schools would give you scholarships with a 3.68 and your LSAT score. But absolutely, schools are admitting people. Many schools will just admit you if you're above your median on one of the metrics. There are schools who, if you're above their LSAT median, they might not give a shit what your GPA is. It's not true for all schools, but splitters definitely get in. All right. Thank you for those of you with hands up for waiting. Gideon, what can I do for you? Gideon, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get off mute.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm in a quite peculiar situation right now.
Oh, you're the one with the huge LSAT increase, right? You just got the 169, is that right?
Yeah, I got a 31-point increase, yeah. And then
well done, dude. That's awesome. Great work.
Thank you. I've been getting a lot of emails for some wonderful schools, like including Yale. And then I'm just wondering, some people think I should just submit. Like a lot of people think I should just let it go because not to go so specific, so many like T14s have been reaching out. And then my concern is that I do have one test left. do you think, because I started submitting as of yesterday, do you think I should just submit and then maybe some think I might not even be waitlisted and then just take it in January if need be? Because I was scoring in the 170s and I got a 169. So what do you think?
So you know that you have a higher score in you. You're capable of a higher score.
Yeah.
I think man, I think with a higher score, the sky might be the limit for you, man. I just wouldn't want you to half-ass this. I want you to full-ass it. You know, I think you don't want to come out of this process asking the question, what if I had just waited another year and done this 100%? I don't know what your personal financial situation is, what your work situation is like. I understand there are individual concerns that will play into whether you can apply next year or where you're at right now. But I made the decision to wait a year to apply later. And that meant that the difference for me was, instead of applying in December with a 170, I applied in September with a 175. So not to brag or anything, but now at least I don't have to ask myself the question, what if?
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah.
Hey, great work, Gideon. That's awesome. Seriously. I can only imagine that's a ton of effort and a ton of work. So
Yeah, so much work since
good job.
2018. Thank you.
Good job. Yeah. Charles, how you doing?
Good, and you?
Doing well. I got done with I'm enjoying this. This is a nice change of pace from the live class that I just taught, which featured one of the literally hardest logic games of all time. I'm trying to, if was anybody here. Nikki's here. Nikki's still in the chat here. We experienced the toy dinosaur game together the last hour. It was fun.
Gotcha. You guys kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe I zoned out. It's been a long day.
You're good.
Need-based aid. So that's I'm sending my financial information to the school. They're getting it. They're determining, okay, based on your financial situation, here's what we have to offer you. Is that the best way to look at it? So it could be some free money, but it could also be just take the rest out in loans.
Yep. I think that's pretty much it. And different schools will handle it differently. You know, the top schools, the Harvard, Stanford, Yale schools, they only give need-based aid. I have heard that they can be pretty generous with it.
So meaning they would come back with more free money. I'm putting that in air quotes.
Yeah, I mean, look, particularly not to be blunt, but those schools want people who look like you in their schools.
Sure.
Right. So if they're not giving out merit scholarship, they will. I mean, that's why they ask for the FAFSA. They will receive your FAFSA. They'll check out your financials. They might put together an offer for you, which is independent of student loans. That's just, this is your discount based on your need. Now, probably other schools will all handle that differently, have their own policies, have their own need-based available amounts. I would think schools also would have different kind of programs that go along with that, or will try to shuffle you into stuff well, you're still going to pay this, but in addition to student, but we also have a program that would help pay off your student loans. The government has a public student loan forgiveness scheme, which I could talk about more. But
basically, it's a scheme.
other schools, individual schools, have their own programs similar to that as well, where a school will be like, well, if you commit to public service, like we will also, if you commit to public service and you're on an income-based repayment plan for your federal loans, we will also chip in for such and such amount. So they have their own versions of those as well. That's not the same as just straight up like need-based aid, but it is.
Yeah. I was kind of wondering because I've gone pretty deep throughout your guys' podcast, and it was like you had some students that went to Yale, some students that went to Harvard. So it was kind of like trying to pry more information out of that, but you guys never actually ended up getting around to it. So that's super helpful. And then one more question, and you talked about it a little bit ago about comparing offers from similarly ranked schools, and I know Nathan had touched on that, and he's kind of like used common sense with a competitive school. But I mean, the obvious example that I would give would be like a Boston. You got like a whole ocean between the two universities that are close to each other. So like that probably wouldn't work. But like I'm trying to
I mean, in that case, it's like if you're looking at the difference between Harvard and BU, and BU wants to give you a full ride and Harvard is going to make you pay, then do you need to be a Supreme Court clerk, or are you fine like working at a firm in Boston?
Sure, exactly.
It's all comes down to like, what do you want to do with your legal career?
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, when you put it like that, that makes more sense.
Yeah, because the same thing, like look at it. People get caught up on the very best, but like if your job, which is like my goal is just, I want to practice law in some city where I don't mind living. And if I go to, like, I live in Sacramento right now, UC Davis is the best school that's like nearest by. A little bit further away is Stanford and Berkeley. It's a different situation. But also in town is McGeorge, University Pacific, which is lowly ranked. But like also the lawyers I know who work in Sacramento, particularly in the government, are like, yeah, McGeorge is all over the place. So it's really just like, if you just want to work a government job in the state capital, then taking a full ride to your like 120th ranked school that's local, you'll be fine.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Yeah, sure thing. Yes, Test 57 is that toy dinosaur game. Test 57 game 3. It's a good one. It's a good one. Followed up by another level 5 game on game 4, which doesn't get as much. I don't think it's notorious, but still fairly tricky. The dinosaur game, at least you can build like worlds on. It's tough, but you can get to more or less complete worlds in it. The game 4 that follows it is just like pretty sparse worlds, and then you gotta puzzle through the answer choices. It's a doozy. Gideon, is that just the old hand that you have up, or you have another question?
Oh, I think it's the old hand, and then
okay,
maybe I could just say something.
It's all good. No worries. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions for me while we're here? Is that it? All right. Well, it's great to see you all. Again, we are expanding our knowledge on all of this stuff as well. So any information that you feel is useful, hit up either of the podcast emails, and we want to keep learning. So thanks all for your support. Good to be with you here today, and I hope to see you in class. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.